Okay, so this video is going to be about the Universal Serial Bus, right, or more commonly known as USB. Okay, so it shouldn't be a very long video, but it is quite a common topic for exams to talk about, so I thought we better talk about it. Alright, so a lot of things call themselves USB. For example, USB mouse or USB keyboard. Alright, but the important thing to note is that these aren't actually USBs, they are just devices that use the USB interface. Okay, so the USB mouse itself is a device that uses the USB technology. It's not a USB. Okay, it's a mouse, it just uses USB technology. Okay, so in that case, what is the USB then? What is the Universal Serial Bus? If it's not the mouse and it's not the keyboard and it's not the gamepad, what is it? Okay, well, it's the whole interface that is used to connect it up. Alright, so we're talking about the USB port. Okay, so that's the bit inside of the computer where you plug it into. Alright, the USB connector, this is the thing on the device itself that plugs into the computer. The cable, and it's also probably important to note here that it might not be a cable, it could also be wireless. So it might not necessarily be a cable. And the USB device itself. Okay, I'll just put a line through that. Just highlight it. So the actual mouse or the thing itself will be referred to as the USB, but remember that could also be a device that doesn't use USB. Alright, now the most common thing to be asked about in the exam are the advantages and the disadvantages. Now there's way more advantages than there are disadvantages to USB. So let's have a look at it. Now, the first one is that it is a simple interface. Right, what does this mean? It means that basically it's almost impossible to put in wrong, because you'll either have a situation where both ends of the USB are the same, so they can go in anywhere, or they're completely different, so you can't mix them up. Okay, and also if you think about a USB, and if I try and draw a picture here, if I drew the end of it, my computer's lagging a bit, you have to be patient, and it kind of looks like this, doesn't it? Right, now that is quite simple. You try to put it in, I put it the wrong way, you turn it around and it goes in. Alright, in the past you would have kind of connectors that looked, this is an awful drawing, kind of a bit like this, and they'd be full of pins that go along in not random, but not always the same sequence, and you would go to push them in and it wouldn't go, so you'd push a bit harder and you'd bend the pins. Alright, this wasn't simple, it wasn't a great feature, but the USB doesn't do that because it's so simple to put in and it's really effective. Okay, so simple interface. Next one is it's fast. Okay, now if you're going to use this point in an exam, make sure you use the keyword relatively fast. Okay, because it's relatively fast compared to other technologies, but it's not as fast as things like Ethernet. Okay, so just remember it's relatively fast. Alright, it's also universal. What does this mean? It means you can use it on Apple, you can use it on Linux, you can use it on Windows, you can use it on your Chromebooks with Android, TVs have them, all sorts of devices have them. So pretty much anything will take a USB and use the USB technology. So it means you can buy a USB pen drive, for example, a memory stick, and it will work on any device you have that has a USB port. Okay. Now, another advantage is that when you plug it in, sorry, I was looking for the word automatically there. When you plug it in, it's automatically detected. Alright, so if I go back to this thing that I showed you before up here, when I plug that in, when I was growing up, when I had these adapters, I would have to install myself the drivers, which is the software that make the device work, and find them drivers. Sometimes I'd even have to go onto websites to find the driver and download them and then install them. But with USB, it just automatically gets detected. The drivers are on the USB device and they go straight to your computer. You won't even notice them being installed, and it's done. Alright, automatically detected. It's great. Alright. Another good advantage is they are able to power devices. Okay, so this is good because you don't need to plug a device in when you're using it with your computer, as well as plugging it into your computer. But it's also good because you can charge things like your mobile phones. Alright, so it's kind of two benefits in one there, because you can charge your phone or charge your device, whatever it is, but you can also, if you're using a device that uses quite a lot of power, it will charge itself. all right, or keep itself working through the computer at least. And I've seen all sorts of things plugged into a USB. If you remember in class I was talking about, I've once seen a fridge, okay, just a little mini fridge to keep a couple of cans of Coke in or something, but it plugged into the USB and kept the Coke chilled. All right, so that's quite a lot of power going through a USB cable there. So that's a great advantage. Okay, so let's have a look at some disadvantages. So there's not as many, right, but they do exist. And one of the biggest disadvantages that it's kind of limited to around about 5 meters. All right, so you're not going to be plugging a USB device in to go quite far. All right, for example, if you had an overhead projector and you wanted to plug it into a computer, you probably wouldn't use USB because it would go longer than 5 meters. All right. Another disadvantage, which is kind of the same as the advantage, this is why you have to use the word relatively. Okay, it's relatively slow. All right. So whereas it's relatively fast to some connections, it's relatively slow to connections like Ethernet. All right. So you can use speed for both an advantage and a disadvantage, but you need to say why. Okay, so this is why you need to talk about it being relatively high compared to some data devices and relatively low compared to other methods of transporting data like Ethernet. Okay, all right, so that's about it for USB, but it is quite common for questions to be asked about it in the exam, so please make sure you can especially remember the advantages and disadvantages.